Good evening, everyone. It is May 8th, 2018, and it is my privilege to call to order the Placerville City Council. And with that, we have Troop 659 in the house. We always love to see Boy Scouts. And our next agenda item is to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And Troop 659, would you like to lead us off?
Yep.
Ready?
Tell them to come up here.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. May we have the roll call, please, tonight, Regina?
Vice Mayor Acuna,
Here.
Councilmember Borelli,
Here.
Councilmember Clarici, Mayor Thomas,
Here?
Councilmember Wilkins.
Here. Wonderful. Item number 3, announcements and presentations to the public. Let's see, I'll start us off. Last Saturday, wasn't it? Saturday before last, it was the Rise and Shine Community Service Day in Placerville. And unfortunately, we were having a granddaughter that day, so I could not participate. Not unfortunately, but it's always a wonderful, wonderful day where just tons of volunteers descend on our community to work on projects and provide just a wonderful service. So, Steve Ewell, could you give us an update on how did the day go, what projects were accomplished? Tell us all about it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a smash-up time at Rise and Shine.
Well, that's good, Steve.
We had over 300 volunteers. We cleaned 1 cemetery, 1 bike trail, 1 creek, 5 community gardens, 2 parks, and a parking garage. We used about 3 yards of decomposed granite, 4 yards of road base, 20 yards of bark, about 60 gallons of paint, 5 yards of trash, 40 yards of green waste and counting still. 40 weed whackers were used, and we drank 10 cases of water and ate 200 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Oh, my word. Well, now that is quite a list. And how long did all this take to be accomplished?
We got it all done in about 5 hours.
That's amazing, amazing. Well, many thanks to all the volunteers that came out that day to serve Placerville and make her shine, and Steve, to all your crews for not only setting up the projects, but facilitating them. I know that takes an awful lot of coordination to pull off a successful day like that, and we really appreciate your time.
It's all about the volunteers.
Yeah, it's all about everyone coming together.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, for making Placerville shine. And the next announcement I have is not this Friday, but Friday, May 18th. We're going to start off at 7 a.m. at the Mosquito Park and Ride with Bike to Work with the Mayor. So if you have any inclination, come on down to the Mosquito Park and Ride, and we're going to bike all the way to Main Street. It's going to be a really good time. So looking forward to that.
And it's all downhill, right?
It's all flat, which I love that. Yeah.
Very good.
But what's really great about that is May 18th is also Amgen. As you all know, Amgen is coming through Placerville. We had a little bit of a change to their schedule today. So we will be getting that information out. But the gist of it is the timing has changed, and the race will hit the city limits at Mallard and Green Valley Road at 10:35. This is about 40 minutes earlier than we had originally anticipated. The racers will hit Spring and Main Street at 10:39 to 10:46. So, about between 10:30 and 10:45, they'll be zooming down Main Street. Our signs say 11:20, so we're going to have to make adjustments on that. So about 10:39. The lead cars, though, will be coming through a half hour before. So around 10 o'clock, the lead cars will be coming down Main Street. So all of the Main Street events are going to be adjusted a little bit. But we're just really excited about that day. So come on down to Placerville, watch the Amgen race, zoom down Main Street. It's going to be a really good time. There will be some vendors around the bell tower. There will be cowbells, community cowbells, cheering the racers on. And then the schools are also participating. I'm real excited about that. Sierra School will be coming just down Thompson Way and standing on the street and watching the racers race past the school, all perfectly chaperoned. And then Sierra Schnell School will be taking bus loads of kids down by the theater and be watching along Placerville Drive, which is really exciting. In addition to that, they've had a whole curriculum this last month on Amgen, weaving it into their art projects, their reading projects, their math assignments, and this was really fun. They had a poster contest, and 5 winners were selected between Sierra and Schnell, and this is one of them. We turned them into posters and put them up on Main Street today, so you'll see them on Main Street on social media. And these are kids' artwork from Schnell and Sierra, and I will be presenting the winners' awards at the respective schools a couple of days before. So really love the community that's coming together for this, and we're going to show Amgen that we can party in Placerville, and we're all about community and supporting folks that are coming through our town, even though they're coming through really fast. So come on down to Main Street for a really good time at Amgen. And let's see, what else do I have? Okay, that's also Western Placerville Interchange. Rebecca, thank you so much for your updates. We got another one today, got another one a couple of days ago. They are just very much appreciated. They're on our city website, so if you want to know what's going on with the Western Placerville Interchange, those things are rapidly happening. I'll give you the highlights of it right now. The Forney Road was closed on April 30th between Diamond Pacific and the El Dorado Trail and the Forney Road trailhead. Businesses near the project site and their access to Forney Road remained open and will continue to remain open during all stages of construction. That's really important. PG&E utility relocation work is being done. Construction surveying is being done. The full closure of the El Dorado Trail and Forney Road between Diamond Pacific and the county jail driveway is scheduled to begin tomorrow. And once the trail is closed, there will be no through access to Forney Road. However, access to the jail will be maintained at all times. We appreciate that for those folks that need to partake. In addition, this is really interesting too. Outside of this project, Caltrans will be moving forward on their grind and overlay project of Highway 50 from just east of Weber Creek all the way up to Carson Road. So Caltrans is going to be maintaining Highway 50. And work for that project is expected to begin in the next few weeks. And once Caltrans notifies us of a start date, we will distribute that information. Rebecca, is there anything else you'd like to add to the Western Placerville Interchange update? No? Okay, so look on our website for maps and further updates. So that's all I have for now. I will start to my left. Any announcements or presentations? No. Clarici? Okay. Councilmember Borelli?
Real quick, yeah. Councilmember Clarici and City Manager Cleve and Pierre. I'm sorry. Pierre, you're down there. I can't see. We went down to let's see, what was the name they put on? Oh, Regional Futures Forum. And it was held at a new facility called Malagra in Carmichael, which was worth the trip in itself, just going down and seeing this new facility that they built down there. And what they presented to us, SACOG sponsored it, and it's the future. They presented the future economic prosperity of all our regions, and the keynote speaker was a lady named Amy Liu. She's the vice president at Brookings Institute and director of the Metropolitan Policy Program. It was an all-day affair, and I thought well worth our going down for it. So, got a lot out of it. A lot of information.
Thank you for representing us. Vice Mayor Acuna?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a few announcements this evening. I'll start with last Thursday I had the honor to represent the mayor and the city at the El Dorado National Day of Prayer, which was sponsored by the Sierra Law Enforcement Chaplaincy and our Placerville Kiwanis Club. It was held this year at the Cold Springs Church, and it was a very nice ceremony. It lasted just about an hour, and good to experience the concern for the community and be in an uplifting environment in these trying times. So thank you to both those organizations for their ongoing sponsorship. It was as I say, my honor to be there and represent us. I also got to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, and I didn't forget it. Secondly, on a more funner note, or not that wasn't very pleasant, on a fun note, Goldbug Park, the development committee has begun to set their spring and summer agenda for events. And the first one I'd like to announce is on May 26th, they're going to be offering exclusive tours to the Priest Mine. That's the upper mine above the Goldbug mine, and it is usually closed and only open on special occasions. So they are going to be giving tours on May 26th that day, and I want to say they probably will start somewhere around 10 o'clock, and the last tour will probably begin at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can go on their website, or you can go to our website and get more information on that. That usually attracts several hundred visitors just to see that mine. The other one that I'll give a shout out to right now is this will be the second year for this, and this event is going to be taking place in July, so I'll probably mention it again. But this will be their second Murder in the Mine dinner event, and this will be on July 14th. It sounds like they have come up with some new ideas after having, their first one. You always come up with new and better ways to present not only the evening's meal, but also the theatrical presentation. I'm happy to announce for them that they have engaged the assistance of John Sanders from Hangtown Grill, and John and his crew will be providing the food for this event. So that is an awesome combination. Appreciate John's willingness to work with the Hangtown group and make that happen out there at the park. So again, first one is this on Memorial Day, the Priest Mine tours, and more info on the Murder at the Mine when it becomes available. And just lastly, I would like to say, just coincidentally, we had the defensible space presentation in our last meeting, and the very next week, County Fire showed up at my front door with their inspection tablet out, and they were going through doing the entire neighborhood, and they were going up to also do a country club drive all the way up to the airport, the big water tank, and they were had already gotten a good handle on some of the issues in the neighborhood. Very personable fire folks from the Pollock Pine Station, and I appreciated the opportunity to let the firefighter go on the property, and I stayed in the house and let him do his thing, and I got a good inspection. I had two watch-out things that he wanted me to keep a track of as fire season progressed, and just thanked him for his time and found it to be useful to actually have that inspection now, because that's something that more and more insurance companies are asking for. So I thought it was very timely, and it was good to see him out and getting to know an area. So thanks to County Fire for their diligence in protecting one of the neighborhoods. The south and the north ends of town are the two susceptible.
Are they going to do this with all the neighborhoods? Or?
I got the impression that they were done for the moment, but now we turn into the, as the firefighter mentioned, we turn into the enforcement part of it, right? Because there'll be those folks that don't get their weeds cut. So that will be the next step that they'll have to watch for. So we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Mark, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Can you let people know, or can you answer this question? For the Priest Mine tours,
yes.
Can you order online ahead of time and get your tickets, or is it a first come, get there early?
It's a first come, first serve.
Okay.
And it usually isn't a very long line. They've got they've gotten the volunteers all lined up, so they'll have ticket sales. The mine tour folks. Okay. Sounds like they had good staffing. So, okay. But good question.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It's a good tour. All right. Item 3.2, the Union Mine High School sports presentation. Unfortunately, the coach had an unforeseen conflict, and so that will not be on tonight's agenda. All right. Closed session report. City Attorney Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight in closed session, the council considered the claim of Cody Shearer, and with all council members present, unanimously rejected that claim. No other reportable action was taken.
Thank you so much. Item 5, adoption of the agenda. Does any council member wish to change anything?
No. Move for adoption.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Ceremonial manners. Proclamation. of National Preservation Month. And as a council and as a city and as a community, we all value our history and our past and our historical resources. So it's my pleasure to read this proclamation. Whereas Placerville is recognized around the world for its place in history as the birthplace of the gold rush, and whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for managing growth, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability, and whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages and all walks of life and all ethnic backgrounds, and whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of heritage that has shaped us as a people, and whereas historical assets needing protection and preservation include physical resources such as structures, sites, objects, landscapes, viewsheds, monuments, and markers, as well as intellectual and educational materials such as books, manuscripts, literary descriptions, photographs, maps, and oral histories. And whereas protection and preservation of our community's historical resources is our legacy to future generations, and whereas This Place Matters is a national campaign that encourages people to celebrate the places that are meaningful to them and to their communities. Now, therefore, I, Wendy Thomas, do hereby proclaim May 2018 as National Historic Preservation Month and call upon the people of Placerville to join their fellow citizens in seeing, saving, and celebrating the history within our city and participating in this special observance. So I like that. This place matters, and it certainly does.
I like that name.
All right. Now turn our attention to item 7, public comment. And this portion of the meeting is reserved for people wishing to address the council on any subject matter that is not on our agenda and that is within the subject jurisdiction of the City Council. State law prohibits the council from taking any action on any item that is not on our agenda. And we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. And you are not allowed to make any personal attacks on individuals, just basically follow the golden rule. So at this time, it is my privilege to invite you to come up for public comment.
Do written comments first.
Oh, I'm
Mayor?
so sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, should we do written comments first? Okay, hold on, Michael, sorry. I apologize. We're gonna do written communications first. So the first letter we received from Gold Country Chiropractic and Spa in regards to overgrowth along Hangtown Creek. City Manager?
Yeah, nothing on that, just refer to staff and we will look into that and communicate with them.
Okay,
So-
just certainly acknowledge that letter. And letter from Ryan Capel, Candy Strike Emporium.
Yes.
Okay.
This one is a request to remove the bench that is in front of the Candy Strike Emporium due to problems with some of the homeless, et cetera, that sit there and supposedly harass people coming by. Our request on this one is that you refer this back to staff if you would like. For a future agenda item, we can bring back options related to that item. So,
Okay. Do you need council approval on that?
no,
Just
just
consensus.
consensus. If that's what you'd like us to do, then
All right.
that's fine.
Thank you very much.
One more item that came through after the agenda was posted, and this is a letter from Jennifer Chapman, and I believe that's been distributed to all of you. It was distributed as that came in. Wanted to note on this one is a request related to an agenda item that is on your agenda tonight, or it's proposed to be. And so due to the late nature this came in, I wanted the council to request that you get an opinion from the city attorney. Can this be acted on as it is requested tonight? So if you'd like that.
Yes, please. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. The request is for you to add an item, in essence, to your agenda, or to one of the agenda items. It has to do with the Clay Street Bridge project and funding additional funding that's being requested for that. The request that the city manager refers to is a request that the city provide $5,000 of funds for a consultant to assist in the nomination of the creating a historic district in downtown Placerville. That is sufficiently different and significantly different than the agenda item, and there is not an exception under the law by which that could be added if you wanted to. You can't do it. It would require that it be an emergency. This is not an emergency. It would also require, the other exception is when there is a matter which has arisen after the agenda was posted for which immediate action is required. In other words, you can't wait 2 weeks because some deadline is going to approach or pass, and then you won't be able to take the necessary action. So in neither of these exceptions apply. Therefore, it's my opinion this matter could not be acted upon tonight.
So the council would have to ask that it be brought back on a future agenda item?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Ma-
Vice Mayor Cunha?
Madam Mayor, I had one or maybe two questions. The issue is, speaks to creation of a historic district downtown on Main Street. This has been something that we've been working on. I was going to ask the city manager if he could confirm that this is an item that is already in the planning department's work queue, if you will.
That's correct. Our planning department has had this in their work program. It's just a matter of bringing it, to the respective agencies. There's other priorities we're working on right now, and that's the only reason it hasn't been brought forward. So.
Okay.
Secondly, due to the detailed information that was provided in this letter, I did some research on my own, and what I would be interested in doing in the short term, at staff's convenience, is to get the descriptions of the differences between a National Register, a state historic, and a local historic ordinance. Because I know we have a historic residential district, and it has regulations that have been in operation for years. And so, because my take on this is that you always deal with your local agency, then you always deal with your state historian, and then you would go to a national. So I would like to, if staff could at some point in the future, as workload allows, if they could give us just a little presentation as to
report?
which one of, yes,
A staff
as to
report?
which each one of those things means and how it affects.
Good idea.
We can work on that and bring it back in the future,
Okay.
future meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, now, time for oral communications. Michael, thank you for your patience.
Good evening, council, and thank you for that proclamation expressing, the importance of historical preservation. I've helped preserve 2 buildings right on Main Street, and I think they've turned out fantastic. And so, with that, city code, this is in relation to demolition permits. So I was shocked years ago when, like an 1890s building up on Broadway, behind the UPS store, one day was just gone. It was just gone. I thought, doesn't something like this go to the Planning Commission? Well, no. City code says if it's in a historic district or it's on the historic resource inventory outside the district specifically designated, it goes under site plan review to the Planning Commission for review. But all these other structures are not protected. So I think the fee is like $100 for a demolition permit, and that building's gone. So I handed to the city clerk the city code for demolition permits, and it reads great to me. Anything within a historic district or specifically protected goes to the Planning Commission, or any historic building identified. Well, in city code, if you look up the definition of historic building, there is none. So what I'm asking the city council to create the definition of what is a historic building or structure. Come up with a number, I don't care what it is, 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, but have a definition, because with this, there's a whole category of old structures outside here that have any protection whatsoever. And I just want to see a shot at reuse. If the building has to be demoed, at least maybe it can be stripped of its important pieces and reused. So if the city council could create the definition of what is a historic building in the city. And yes to the 5K, bring that back to the future, in the future. And I think with the power of the city behind it, the ability for grants gets much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening.
Hi, Jennifer Chapman from Clay Street, and thank you for circulating the email I sent this morning. Just as a note, as it relates to agenda, because it relates to the scope of work of a contract you're approving, I think there is a nexus, and I requested the details of that scope of work as it relates to asking Drake Haglund to do more studies, and I have heard from SHPO, through the SHPO's office, that some of that work is more historic study for the draft EIR. And so in essence, this was related to what you are going to approve tonight, which is the scope of work to the tune of about $200,000 to expand what Drake Haglund, as the consulting firm, is going to be doing. And I asked explicitly, does that include more historic study,
And actually,
evaluation?
Those
And-
comments you can certainly bring back
Okay.
up when we have that agenda item.
Right, and so now I'm just going to focus on, that was the part that's related, which you essentially told me it's not on the agenda, but I was thinking there is an agenda connection, so I'll address that further later, but I just want to, for the benefit of the audience that didn't get the email, and just to comment, well, first of all, some of this matter of grants, you have to be a certified local government in this arena that the National Park Service provides guidance on, and I think that's something we definitely want to apply for, being such a historic town here, being essentially a California historical landmark. Placerville is a California historical landmark designated in the 1950s. And regarding what is the definition of historic, the city is welcome to define it, but in general operating terms, in other parts of the government, 50 years is considered historic. But what Friends of Historic Hangtown is proposing is that we need to act on the national significance of this historic district that we all live in. It is been recognized, as I said, it was a California historical landmark already, and clearly, when you look at the gold rush, the significance and the number, there's already a number of National Historic Register listings in the city. It at least needs to be studied and evaluated. My personal opinion, as someone who has been in this realm a lot, I believe it will be nationally eligible, but it's also something that when you're talking about national significance, it can bypass the local jurisdiction if the local jurisdiction doesn't want to address it. And so we want to address it with the city. Obviously, you all have said that you care about this and you've been looking at this for years. So time is of the essence as it relates to the Clay Street project. But Friends of Historic Hangtown has identified a consultant, has identified a number of grants we can apply to fund this consultant who has experience with National Register nomination process. There's a lot of work involved. You already have that building inventory from the 80s, which I imagine was done for the general plan and did have SHPO funding. But in any case, it was in the 1980s, and so it's old. It's an old evaluation. You have all those historic buildings that need to be reevaluated because their condition, may have changed since the 1980s. And so that's one piece of the work. And then obviously anything else in that district. Every parcel that's in that district that the Historical Advisory Committee
Can you wrap up your
proposed to you,
comments, Jennifer?
I will. Every single parcel would be evaluated if it's in that district boundary. So there's a lot of work. So Friends of Historic Hangtown is requesting that the city provide $5,000 toward what will probably be a $15,000 contract for a consultant, which again could also be something that was done through the draft EIR process because it is related work. Because the whole Clay Street project is in the historic district that the historical
Please wrap your comments up,
advocates
Jennifer. Time's
have
up.
proposed.
Sorry.
We don't have a large audience here, but I am wrapping up my
Excuse me.
comments.
Excuse
So-
me, everyone gets 3 minutes.
And I will again come back during the Clay Street portion of the project. But again, just for the final thing, the last comment is $5,000 was awarded to the Amgen event, $5,000 was awarded to the gold panning event, and this is essentially $5,000 toward the historic preservation, which is the future of the heritage-based tourism in the city. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Anyone else like to have comments tonight? All right. With that, I'll close the public comment portion. And
Madam Mayor,
yes,
since we allowed that to happen, I'd like to clarify one or two things. That there is no historic district on Main Street currently. And it's important that, Ms. Chapman is very adamant at addressing her points, and I appreciate that. And I think it's also important that we let folks know that this district that she refers to does not exist. And it isn't because we've prevented it from existing. It has not been the will of the community for the last 50 years to create that district. I've tried a couple of times to look into it, and I think we heard just a minute ago that our staff doesn't have it on their work list. So I appreciate that. And the idea that, very nice that they were offering to try and do some of this work. And then the research that I've done, I don't know that jumping right to the National Historic Register is necessarily the step that we would want to do. And again, knowing that our staff is going to be working on this perhaps later this year, that there are going to be very clear steps that we will want to take, and they're going to begin locally, and then they're going to go to our state. So thank you for allowing me to address that.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Acuna. Yes.
It's interesting to me. This is the kind of action that my guess is if we took it on almost any other subject in town, the Friends of Old Historic Hangtown would be beating us about the head and neck for not going out and actually talking about this as a concept to the community. You know, it's all well and good to say we should make a historic district. Now, I talked to a handful of property owners on Main Street. None of them had ever even heard of this. They'd heard about the ideas of doing it, but this specific issue, I read them the email, and they said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Could you imagine if we started a process and just went to the end and said, we're going to go do this, and we don't talk to anybody? I mean, we get accused of that all the time, in fact. I think it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible to me. And so the other thing, too, is the Friends of Old Historic Hangtown, who are they? I know they have a Facebook page, but when I've asked who they are, I get crickets, because Facebook tends to be an anonymous thing. The people that run the Facebook page have, at least this was like 2 years ago, I haven't tried recently. I'd want to know who they are. Who are the Friends of Old Historic Hangtown? Who runs that Facebook page? Have the property owners along Main Street that this would affect been talked to? Have they been asked any questions? Have they been shown the pluses and the minuses? Have they been shown those things? I think this is an interesting and intriguing concept. I think it has a lot of merit. When I read it, I said, huh, that's an interesting thing. I also thought, it's a process. It's a process for the community. I think one of the reasons why there hasn't been a historic district made is because I think it's very difficult to organize the property owners on Main Street who for right or wrong reasons feel that this would be a restriction on their property rights. And now I don't even know if that's true or not, but I know that some of them feel that way because when we've talked about this informally, I've talked to some of the property owners on Main Street, and that is the first thing they'll bring up. Well, I don't want to have this because I don't want my property rights infringed. Now, I don't even know if that's true or not. That may be totally just some thing they have in their head, and it may not apply at all. But if you don't go talk to those people, well, they'll be here and they'll be talking to us. So I think this is a very interesting idea, and I think it's quite intriguing. I think that we should kind of wait to see what happens on Clay Street over the next few weeks because folks may be surprised how much history is left in place in that project. And I think that we might be able to come up with something that the community might really like to support. This other thing is intriguing to me as well, and I've had a discussion with Mike on more than one occasion about coming up with some standards for those things. When buildings disappear in town, it can be very, very not exciting, and you kind of go, well, how'd that happen? But that's a process, and I'm sorry, it takes a long time, and our staff has to make sure that the lights come on every day in this town. So anyway, I think this is a good idea, and I would love to have some community meetings about it, and I would like to be able to certainly engage the property owners on Main Street, because you got to get 50 plus 1 in order to make this work. You have to have half of them agree with you, and one extra. And I don't know if that would ever happen. So, but I like Mark's idea, doing something local, having local control over some of the things on Main Street and some of the historical components of Main Street. I think it's a great idea. But I think it's going to take time, and the idea of just walking in here and asking for $5,000. The other thing, too, is Uncle Fuzzy did a lot of tap dancing to get $5,000 for the Gold Panning Championships. He didn't just roll in here and say, hey, hand me $5,000. He went to us. He lobbied people. He brought tons of people in and is supporting him. PDA, anybody that would listen to him about the gold panning championship. And he had to claw that $5,000 out of our hands because we have a lot of things we can spend our money on. The Amgen thing was a little different. It kind of fell out of the sky on us. But even there, we talked to folks. We got some things. We made sure that there were other people supporting that project before we gave them any money. And I'm sorry, the Friends of Old Historic Hangtown are a little too opaque for me. Now, if they want to come in here and say, hey, I run the website, I do this, I do that, yeah, okay, great. Now I got faces and names, and we can have a real dialogue about a very important subject. So anyway, that's what I think about that.
Madam Mayor, I also want to add to both what Mr. Acuna and Mr. Clarici had to say. And John, I'm going to ask you to get in your memory bank, because I do remember that there were some, I'm not going to say formal studies, but I'm pretty sure it was when I was fairly new on the council. And John, you are right. The property owners were against it. I mean, they just came out in numbers and said, no way, because the way that it was presented to them is that it's tying their hands too much. And so, John?
You and I have the same recollection.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I do get forgetful, but that I do remember, and I know.
And I don't think we want to get too far into
No.
this.
We don't want
but
to.
I just
Right.
want to. I just want to reiterate that.
I think it's important because, A, we have a member of the 4th, 5th, whatever that estate was, I remember that, back in the corner there. And also, some people watch us on TV, and certainly the advocates for this idea are going to go back to their community and talk about it. And it should be known, we are not against this idea. I think this idea has lots of merit. But it has to be run up and down, literally up and down Main Street a few times, pluses and minuses, what it means, how it would be implemented, what it would involve, before we start handing people checks.
I think the bottom line is we are planning on bringing this back, this review of a historic district. It will be a city process, and that's a really important component. And we look forward to a very serious consideration of the idea of a historic Main Street district in concert with the downtown businesses. And I think that's the bottom line. So we look forward to that. It's a staff process based on staff's priorities and timing. But it is a priority for us to look into that. So we all look forward to that at a later time. So with that, we're going to move on to the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion unless any member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion. Does any member wish to do so?
I'll move consent. Oh, you do,
No,
I'm sorry.
no. I just want to make one comment. We are going to be paving Woodridge Court, which is very exciting, because if I remember correctly, there was some interesting graffiti on Woodridge Court at one point or another in the last year or so. So hopefully those folks up there will really enjoy their new asphalt that they'll be getting up there on Woodridge Court. It certainly needed it. It looked pretty rough up there. So anyway.
Thank you for highlighting that. I was also going to mention that because that is a road that is in desperate need of repaving. And I thank our city staff for jumping on that and making that a priority and finding the money to do that, because a lot of folks live off of Woodridge, and we appreciate that. That needs to be paved in concert with all the rest of the paving that is going to be rolling out this year. Very exciting.
Ribbons of asphalt as far as the eye can see. I would like to second her motion, if anyone else did.
Does any member of the public wish to comment on any item on the consent calendar? Seeing none?
I had a question for staff.
Yes.
On 8.4, first of all, congratulations on that. And again, wonderful to see that our local contractor, Gordon Vicini Inc., is going to be doing that work. Madam Engineer, what's the projected start date for Mr. Vicini and his crew?
I actually want to give this one over to Mr. Yule with any kind of support on the item. This is a community services and public works project.
All right, Steve is paving
they've been running the bidding and coordinating with Vicini.
Oh, well, thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. Mr. Yule, could you provide that answer, please?
Yes, sir. We should get started by the end of the month.
Cool.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
exciting.
Great, thank you.
And are the homeowners there made aware of that?
Not yet.
Oh,
They are tonight.
They're
After
going to be
tonight.
so happy. That's
Yes,
wonderful.
Steve.
After they read the Mountain Democrat, they'll
Yeah,
be.
they're going to read the Democrat, new paving.
Mayor, one more point I want to make on that, just for everyone's information. Staff has been working very closely with EID because they had a project on Woodridge Court. It was not programmed to be done for a couple of years, at least not till next year. We worked with them. They moved that up and got it programmed so that they're going to do that before we do our paving job. Is that correct,
Excellent.
Rebecca?
That's correct. Yeah, they are going to be replacing some water services within the vicinity, and they've actually began the process to prepare their plans and specs for that separate project. So big thank you to EID for coordinating with City Public Works and City Engineering on that process as
We
well.
sure appreciate that coordination to make sure that our paving doesn't get dug up later. So,
Yes, ma'am.
good news. All right. So with that, may we have a vote, please? Regina?
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Councilmember Luigi, you have another comment?
You're not on the consent calendar, but I do want to make note of the two letters we received, one from Gold Country Chiropractic and Spa, and the other one from Ryan Capel at Candy Strike. This issue, the homeless issue and its impacts on the community, it's going to come up in budget. We're being asked to provide $20,000 for a homeless coordinator. There's a lot of questions to be asked around this particular subject, and I have particular sympathy for the folks there on Main Street who have to deal with a lot of the sort of the transient notion of the homeless population as it goes up and down and then sometimes hangs out on Main Street. And I don't want to get that lost because these are important issues and we should reach out to them and let them know that we're thinking about it and developing a strategy.
And the
around
city
this idea.
manager has been in contact with Ryan, and
Good,
and,
good, excellent.
staff will be working on that and bringing it back to us.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Madam Mayor. I was reading.
It is an important issue, no doubt. All right. No items were pulled from the consent calendar, no ordinances or public hearings. We move to item 12.1, discussion action items. And on item 12.1, I am going to recuse myself as I own property along Broadway. So I will turn it over to Vice Mayor Acuna.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll wait a moment while you leave the chambers. Make sure she's sequestered away. I don't hear the door closed yet. All right, item 12.1 is a request by staff to adopt a resolution regarding a long-term project that we've been working on with our consultants, REY Engineering, for the Broadway Sidewalk Project. We have a staff report before us this evening that outlines the funding that's taken place so far and also requests this additional funding. I might ask our staff if they have any additional information they'd like to provide.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of council. This project does propose to improve the sidewalks and their connectivity along Broadway from Mosquito Road to Schnell School. The city applied for and successfully received Highway Safety Improvement Program funding, HSIP, short for that, for the Broadway Sidewalks project in the amount of almost $680,000. Comparatively to other federally funded projects in the city, this is actually considered a smaller capital improvement project. When the funding became available, rather than issuing a formal request for proposals, the city opted to utilize the on-call engineering list that was established May of 2016 via council action. And this list includes 6 firms with various areas of expertise and services, ranging from geotechnical to water distribution system design, sewer collection system design, structures, and overall city streetscape and infrastructure. City staff requested proposals and received 3 total. Upon evaluation, REY's proposal was accepted for the project. The item before you this evening is for approval of the contract with REY Engineers, Inc. for the said project, along with specific staff recommendations as summarized in the item report. And that concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Is there any questions from council on the item? Thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this. Would anyone like to address the council on item 12.1 regarding the Broadway Sidewalk Project? Seeing no one approaching the podium, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. What's the desire of the council?
I move.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Wilkins is the second. Is there any other discussion?
Oh, we already asked.
We already did that.
Okay.
I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yule, if you could ask the mayor to please rejoin us, we'll move on to item 12.2. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, that was
We're
quick.
ready for 12.2.
All right, well, thank you.
We're going to
for
have
your
a
good
new
work.
sidewalk.
Awesome.
Project on Broadway.
Awesome. All right, item
Or on Broadway.
12.2, adopt a resolution approving Amendment 3 to consultant services with Drake Hagelin in the amount not to exceed $196,500 and change for additional environmental documentation and engineering tasks for the Clay Street Bridge Replacement Project and additional items. So with that, who do we turn? Rebecca, this is your baby. So
Clay Street.
tell
Yes,
us
ma'am.
all about it.
Good evening, Mayor Thomas, Vice Mayor Acuna, and members of the council. As you know, the city has completed the circulation of the Environmental Impact Report, the EIR, with public comment period closing on April 18th. City staff has organized the comments received and is now reviewing them in preparation for responses as it pertains to the final environmental document. City council and city staff also continue to listen to comments, both pro and con, regarding the overall project. Additionally, Caltrans, as the federal oversight NEPA lead agency, also functions with due diligence and project assessment. Per staff's report at a meeting held on November 14, 2017, the NEPA environmental document was elevated from a categorical exclusion to an environmental assessment finding of no significant impact, also known as an EA FONSI. This elevated document was not included in the original contract with Drake Hagelin and Associates. The amendment before council this evening reflects additional scope to the environmental documentation process and support to the EA FONSI NEPA document. It also includes further alternative evaluation if needed, or preparation of an environmental impact statement, should Caltrans choose to further elevate the NEPA document required for this project. Staff's recommendations are summarized in the report before you this evening. That concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you so much. Does council have any questions for staff at this time?
Not this time. Nope.
All right. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Hi, Jennifer Chapman from Clay Street. So again, I had requested an email, I believe it was to Pierre and Rebecca, about this as soon as I saw it on the agenda for the details of what, when you say here, additional environmental documentation. And so what I'm asking about, because I assume it's related to historic resources, what is in the scope of work related to historic resources? What we understand is that looking at the draft EIR, certain resources were evaluated as individual resources, and were they eligible for national or state listing. However, these resources were not considered as contributing elements to a potentially significant historic district. It doesn't matter if the historic district has been designated and created as an ordinance. All of this is about the potential eligibility. And so even in the previous Caltrans inventory of historic bridges, as an example, they supposedly evaluated this bridge as whether or not it was a contributing element to a historic district. However, in that inventory of 200 bridges, they only found one, and that's because although I've asked them about their methods, it's pretty obvious that what they were looking at was existing districts and whether or not the resource contributed, rather than the potential eligibility of the district, which is what is the issue for the task at hand, which is this evaluation of impacts. So I'm just asking, I'm asking, you all have it in front of you, you have a scope of work with tasks, and so I'm just asking you to share with this audience what in this scope of work for $200,000 involves further, as you say it in this agenda, environmental documentation of historic resources.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Good evening, Carl.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Vice Mayor Acuna and the rest of the council. It's good to be here, as I am one of those antiques that they talk about it being over 50 years old according to the federal government. I'm glad of that because the alternative is not so good. But it appears to me that what our city engineer said was this is additional requirements because of discovery during our EIRs and additional request. So to go on and tag on and say, give $5,000 to some other architect or some other person with an opinion is not necessary. And as I understand it, this bridge is not in any historic district, nor is it on the inventory for historic structures on the Main Street. So trying to bring the bridge back just because it may be historic, built in the 30s, a couple of years older than me. But, you know, if I'd been a narrow piece of work over that whole 70 years, 80 years, I would also think that I would be crumbling and falling apart and may end up in the creek someday. That thing is absolutely unsafe. One lane of traffic and a pedestrian walkway that maybe is 3 feet wide if you have a car on there. It just doesn't make good sense to me. It's time to move on with this project, and let's not keep trying to drag on one more thing because you happen to understand that business that of the federal government. I guess if you work for the feds and you do that all day long, you just think it's a normal course of business. I look at it as, from a business standpoint, you're spending a lot of money to go through this thing. Not that the public doesn't have a right to look at their project and see what's going on, but this environmental documents, it's closed. Let's move forward and let's get this thing done.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, with that, I'll close public comment and bring it back. Rebecca, any additional information on the scope of work that you'd like to add?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The additional work related to any kind of consideration towards historic evaluation is to support the upgraded NEPA document. In staff's report, I mentioned that in November 2017, which was fairly recently considering the duration of the project, Caltrans made the determination that they wanted to upsize or upgrade the NEPA document. It's still not the highest NEPA document you can have, but it does have additional requirements that need to be now included into the studies. And there have been some comments that we have received through the process that we would also like to, address within the studies as well. It's important to remember that we like to keep an open mind and keep fluid with this project, and we have our ears open.
Great. Appreciate that response from staff. That's,
Sure.
That's very important that we are open to creative solutions to community concerns and moving forward with that lens. So thank you. Any comments by council?
Yeah,
Did you close the public hearing?
Yes, I did.
Oh, thank you, Madam
Yes, I
Mayor.
did close public comment.
okay. I think that this is an interesting conundrum because you get comments back during these processes. So we had 45 days, you got a bunch of comments. And I read some of them, and some of them were really intriguing. There was a couple in there regarding historical issues, and I go, I never thought of that. That's interesting. The idea now that we have to because we're doing a work on this, we're providing data and information for this NEPA document, and we're responding to the comments. We're just employing our consultant to do that. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do in this process. It would be rather odd if you said, well, we got a bunch of comments and we don't really know the answers, and we're not going to spend any more money to figure it out. I mean, that's not. And then if you have if you have a federal document or a state document, you want them to match up. You want them to be consistent with each other so that you're not saying one thing in one document and something that might be contradictory or not as well fleshed out in the other document. The great thing for the NEPA folks is they've got this great EIR sitting there. There's a lot of information, but it has to be translated over to the federal side. So this is interesting. I really think on the historicity of this particular project, I know nobody trusts the government, and that's fine. But I really do want to say, wait for the openings on this thing, because I think people will be very interested and pleasantly surprised by some of the very creative ways that we have come up with how to do this project. That I think will meet a lot of these concerns about the historical preservation and keeping certain things in certain places. It'll be, I think, an eye-opener for folks. And I think we're not too far away from having some sort of reveal or such.
Don't have a timeline yet. But
Well,
no,
can you
no
give
timeline
me-
yet, but we're getting close.
Since we're talking about history, can you give me an eon or an epic to talk about?
What do you think, Rebecca? We
We have some preliminary discussions on the alternatives that are being considered tomorrow, but we are working with the consultant, and part of this amendment actually includes incorporating some of those conceptual ideas.
Right.
Good, look
sorry,
forward to that.
I don't want to throw out a date yet until
Yeah,
we
I
have
know.
some
If it
of
was,
them.
yeah.
And our
I don't
staff's
wanna-
hard at work right
Okay.
now.
We will
But
get.
it will be soonish, relatively soonish.
All right.
Rather than
Thank you.
later-ish.
Councilmember Wilkins? No?
No, I'm,
Vice Mayor Cunha?
my
All
questions
right.
have been answered.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second it.
All right. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna,
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici,
Aye.
Mayor Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Aye.
Madam Mayor, comment quickly, if I might,
Absolutely.
to just say that what staff has brought for us this evening in this particular item was concerns that our federal bridge partner, Caltrans in this case, has, and we are just furthering our research and furthering our discovery on this site to ensure that there are no unanswered questions in their mind. And so I commend the staff and our consultant for taking that on and working as a good partner with Caltrans on this project. And I would suggest that people need to recognize that, at least for myself, I have an open mind to what this project is going to look like. And if you're out there making those are preconceived notions if you think you know. So,
Because we don't know.
yeah, because we don't know. So we will be finding out shortly, and I appreciate staff's efforts to bring forward some new alternatives.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, item 12.3, adopt a resolution ratifying contract change orders 1, 2, and 3 in the total aggregate amount of $46,000 with Doug Veerkamp General Engineering for the Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2 project. Rebecca?
Good evening. As we are all aware, the Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2 project is moving forward with construction, and as promised, we have returned back to council for review and ratification of the various CCOs that have been approved to date underneath the authority that was granted to the city manager via council. Below, as part of the report, we have 3 change orders. One is for flagging, another is for changeable message signs, and the third is for removal and disposal of an existing metal beam guardrail. The details of such are itemized and explained in staff's reports. The total aggregate amount for the change orders is $46,000, which is within the, each individual amount is within the city manager's authorized amounts to approve a change order. So with that, that concludes staff's recommendations. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Certainly seem like reasonable items, and we always appreciate Doug Veerkamp General Engineering's excellent work in keeping our community safe and moving projects forward in a very expeditious manner.
And I think it's great that 2 of our capital projects are being done by local
Yes,
contractors,
amen.
employing local
Amen.
labor, using local machines in a local place.
Everything. Local dirt.
Local
And I-
people that give back to the community, yes, which is an
And
amazing thing.
I really like the portable, the changeable message signs. I think
Yeah.
that's really, I'm glad you got them out there now. You're giving everybody plenty of warning, so.
So important to keep communication open on these big projects, you're so right. All right, any other comments or questions by council?
A question for our city engineer. Do we have a schedule for overhead utility relocation?
It's a little bit in fluctuation right now. We have about a 3-week look ahead. When a project, federal funded project or any Caltrans standard project is brought forward, there's a requirement within the contract called a critical path method schedule. And it outlines the various tasks as they relate to bid items on the project. We've had to maintain, again, flexibility even with that because we had some delays related to weather. And so we are beginning the grading for where the PG&E poles will be set. And as the grades are made available of the new locations, PG&E will come out, relocate a pole, we'll get the next location set up and kind of piggyback along that way. It's an
good.
ongoing process.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll move approval of the item.
Let's get public comment first.
I thought you already did that.
No, not yet.
What
Hold
you
that thought.
waiting for?
Public comment
I'll
is
hold my
open.
thought.
Oh, sorry about that,
Hi,
Jennifer.
Jennifer from Clay Street. I'm hoping Pierre can just nod and say yes. I'm pretty sure the Western Placerville interchange was a joint EIR, EA Fonzie.
We will get that question answered.
Okay, so I'm
What's your
fairly,
question?
well, I'm just making the analogy. That is another project. We have many projects around here by virtue of our connection with Highway 50. We have an enormous nexus with federal funding for transportation. And so there are many projects that come to us, local funding, federal funding, locally administered. And therefore, we trigger NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. And so it would have been nice if the Clay Street project was a joint document from the beginning, a joint, CEQA NEPA document, but it wasn't. And the whole reason it got elevated to an EA is because starting with my questions to Mark Acuna, was always like, what's happening with NEPA? What's happening with NEPA? Nobody could explain it, and I finally got through to Caltrans and Federal Highways, and they were, yes, considering a categorical exclusion in a project that so clearly, just the Druid Monument alone.
Jennifer,
the
please keep your comments to this agenda item. We are on the Western Placerville interchange.
Correct, and
not Clay Street.
they're all connected, which is another
No, they're
concept.
not. This agenda item is the Western Placerville interchange.
Right, which had its NEPA level was an environmental
Do you have any-
assessment FONSI, and it is a related project to this, and the concerns about some of the historic issues in that project were raised by Sue Taylor related to Southern Pacific Railroad, et cetera. But anyway, I just was hoping to confirm that, yes, that was a joint. Can you confirm for that, Pierre?
Jennifer, keep your comments to us, and we will get that answered.
Oh, the comments are to you. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, you'll get an answer tonight?
We will have staff answer
Okay.
it.
I'm pretty sure it was one of my emails, and I'm hoping Pierre can confirm.
All right, thank you.
And again, we should have had a joint document. It would have made it a lot easier for everybody on this other one.
Okay, we're talking about Clay Street right now. Any other comments on the Western Placerville interchange? All right, we'll close that comment. Does staff have any further comments on this item?
There's a motion, I'll second it.
I'll wait for staff. I'd like to, I don't remember anybody being worried about the old railroad way back then.
I believe
That was
it
my bailiwick.
Sorry, go ahead, Rebecca. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Sorry about that. I believe the request and the information was requested via email, and we'll reply to the email.
Great, thank you so
Very
much.
good.
Appreciate that. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the dais,
So moved.
and we need roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And before I move on to council reports, I want to commend Boy Scout 659, Troop 659. Most Boy Scout troops don't sit
Oh,
through
yes.
this much of a council meeting.
They
Because I
bail.
know this gets really dry. So, kudos to all of you. We appreciate you being here. Always enjoy seeing our young people in the audience. All right, council reports. Transit Authority. No, that was, our meeting was also with transportation was canceled
Canceled, right.
this month. LAFCO? Vice Mayor Cunha?
We meet later this month.
Okay, SACOG?
Did not, board meetings next week, and actually my fill-in will have to go. 'cause I'm not gonna go.
Great, and no 2x2. All right. Any requests for future agenda items?
I think we
All
covered it earlier with the request for, that's planning staff's convenience to bring the
Historic
concepts
district.
of the various levels of historic district forward.
And responses from the two letters?
Unfortunately, Ms. Chapman has left.
All right. City manager and staff reports. Receive and file El Dorado County Fire Quarterly Report. Mr. Morris.
Nothing really, this is just for your information. If you have any questions or comments, I'll try to answer them, but.
It's a very
this is
brief
just-
report, so
Yeah.
No,
so-
it's fine.
we're good. All right. With that, it's at a little after 7. That's a record for us for a while.
That's your record.
Yeah, that's, ouch, Patty.
Oh, that was me.
Really? No, it wasn't mean, it was
Thank you, True.
congratulations.
I thought it was.
So,
Not.
no, not at all. With that, we'll see you on
Thank you,
May
Boy Scouts.
22nd with a whole list of items currently on here, which we'll see what falls to the
Yeah.
bottom line.
How long's that gonna last?
That's right. And so thank you for being here tonight. Good night, Placerville.